Now, Lee Summit has been going through a diversity thing. They've been kind of working on the whole diverse situation. Obviously, you're a black male. What is your approach to that? How do you feel about? I mean, not how, but what would be your approach to that?
So, you know what? One of the things that I want to just make clear is when we talk about equity, we're not necessarily even talking about race. Race is most definitely an aspect to it. I would be not being honest if I did not say that it isn't a piece of it. But that's a very small piece. But when you have different subgroups, when you have deaf and hard of hearing, when you have individuals, like I stated earlier, with myself when I was a kid, with IEPs and other dyslexia disabilities, or things like that. And we should all make sure that all kids succeed, no matter what type of mishap or setback they may have. So we must meet them where they are, and then we must make sure that they're in a position to where they're going to be able to succeed and have a great future for themselves.
That's very important because you brought up a big key when you talk about I guess inclusion and things like that and diversity. It doesn't always just mean black and white.
That's
And
right.
I think a lot of times we've narrowed it down to a point where when you hear the word diversity, you instantly think black and white. But you don't think about some of the other people that are unfortunate as far as young people that maybe have a disability and things
Right.
like that. That is part of equity, or that is a part of diversity.
You're absolutely
That's
correct.
that's a great point to bring up because I didn't even think about that. But and it also makes them think that it makes a kid feel appreciated or not looked over.
Correct.
So when you're dealing with those type of situations as far as kids go, what are some of the things that you guys that you personally look for as just implementing with young people?
So, one of the things that again, I think the best way to take approaches is to be able to examine your own experiences. And so I know when I was growing up, having an IEP and being that student, here you are with your peers in a classroom, and then you're singled out and you're pulled out of the classroom and you're taken to a much smaller classroom. And then the other kids around, they want to know, why is it that Roderick's leaving the class? And so I think the best thing, as an approach is to, number one, make sure and make it very clear that just because you may have different things that may need a little bit more work, or someone may be able to catch on a little easier than someone else, does not mean something's wrong with you. And so I think we have to make sure that kids feel loved, that they know that they're cared for, and that we're trying to do the best things that's for them so that they can ultimately have the best experience, and that they don't feel the pressures of the different type of things that are around. And so when it pertains to making sure that everybody has a fair playing field and we're meeting people, the students, right where they are, I think we have to be able to follow the equity plan that's in place. I think we have to make sure that we're holding the school board accountable for this equity plan. It was passed. And so I think that it's important, not to recreate a new wheel, but you utilize what exists, and then you tweak it or you make changes as time go if there's things that need to change. And so, I'm not here to create a new wheel, but I am here to make sure that what has been established is carried out.
Absolutely, absolutely. You brought up something. How important is it to hear our children? Our children have voices, and oftentimes I think uh, their voices get silenced or to the back because of what we as parents or administrators probably feel. How important is it to actually listen to our children and what they're saying?
You know what? You said something I think that's what's missing. I think that's what's missing, is that we're not listening to our students. We're not listening to our children. You know what? They are the ones that are experiencing the things in the classroom. They're the ones that's experiencing what it's like to go to school in this time and day and age. And so we have to listen to them to see what are some things that we are getting wrong so that we can get it right. When you mention students, I think that's our number one priority, is caring for our students. But then also, let's talk about our teachers. we have to make sure that our teachers are being heard. And then
Absolutely.
when you look at a holistic approach to it, we have to make sure that our community is being heard. And so that's something that I do want to bring to the board, is I want to bring that approach of just being an average, an average father, just trying to make decisions for not only his kids, but also other kids in our community. And again, our voice, I believe, have not been heard. And so it's important that we do listen to the community, that we do listen to the important stakeholders that live in our community and that we serve.
Absolutely. Just during COVID, man, there's been a lot of uncertainty, and I think you were on a Zoom some time ago, and I chimed in and we were talking about just the effects that it had on my children, is specifically my fourth grader. That right there is tough, and I know that they're doing the best that they can. Trust me, I believe that. I mean, but we can do only what we can do. Moving forward, what would be some things that we could? Moving forward, what would be some things that we could kind of head off some things that we were kind of caught off guard by?
So, one of the things that I think, one of my platform items is the health and safety of our students and our staff. And so that means that we have to enhance the COVID-19 protocols across the district and collective of all of the schools. And so that means that, number one, our kids need to be back in the classroom. They need to be in school, but they have to be in school to where they're going to be safe. Where our teachers and our staff is safe. And so we have to make sure that we're following the professionals of health and safety, and we follow the guidelines and things that are necessary to make sure that our students and that our staff all across the board, that's from our custodial workers, that's from our cafeteria workers, that's from our paraprofessionals, that's from our teachers, that's from our administrators. We have to be able to make sure that all of them are safe, so that not only are they comfortable to be in a working and learning environment, but also so that our kids can be the best that they need to be. And so you're absolutely right. Some kids are doing well with virtual. I'm fortunate enough that my kids, they really have some great teachers that have been doing a really good job virtually. But I want my kids in the classroom. I think my kids will thrive much better in the classroom. And so I think we, as a district, we have to do a much better job of being transparent, but then also following those that are professionals at this. And we can't just make new rules on the dais at the last minute or recommendations, but we hired a superintendent to do a job. And so we have to be able to follow and trust that Dr. Buck is going to do the best for our students. And so the recommendations that he set before us, we have to follow them, and we have to make sure that our kids are safe.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And the Dr. Buck was he was implemented this year, last year, I believe. But and that even at that, just I mean, I'm sure there's some administrative shifts that he's had to make, coming from just the whole implementation, that right there. And I know Megan Marshall, she's also one of the new ones that are in there. I think that's important. We live in Lee's. I've been here about 2 years now. We enjoy it.
Okay.
But I believe that when you live somewhere, you should be a part of where you live. I grew up in the inner city, Kansas City, Missouri. We didn't know a whole lot about the school structure and things like that. So we were almost kind of led around by every whimsical, and now me being older and having children in the school system, now I'm being more understanding on what needs to be done. I need to know what's going on with the schools, and I need to be a part of the PTA meetings and things like that. I think it's important. How important is it, not even from just a teacher student, but from the parents aspect? How important is it's the teachers to see the parents be involved, and the students and the children to see the parents come up and be a part of their education?
You know what, Chris? I think that's very important for the student, first of all, to know that their parent is there to support them and to help guide them through this period of their life of matriculating through school.
Yes.
but also I think we have to be understanding, and again, I try to always consider myself. And when I say consider myself, before I try to judge, across the field, I try to take a self-examination of what it was like for me. And so for my parents raising 7 children, for them, the values that they wanted to teach us as kids was to work hard. You don't get anything if you don't work hard. And so my parents had full-time jobs, plus they had part-time jobs to make sure that we had the necessities, and they gave us a lot of our wants. But I think it's important that we also consider that single mother that all she is able to do is work to be able to provide for her children. So then she's depending on the public school system to be able to at least help in the veins when it pertains to education, pre-K through 12th grade. And so I think if you're able to be involved and engaged, then most definitely I think it's important. But if you're not able to do it, then I think that we also have to do some outreach. So I think there's in-reach, but then there's also some outreach. And so then that's when we meet students where they are. So if we see that there's a student that may not necessarily have that advocate at home, then that means we have to work even harder to make sure that student succeed, because they may not have that extra push that some other family may have.
Yeah, that's big, because oftentimes it's, people feel, even children, they feel if you care or if you don't care. They can feel if a teacher is there to collect a paycheck, or if the teacher actually is really vested in their education, in their life. They can feel the difference, and oftentimes is they don't verbalize it, but they go home and they feel that, and even during the pandemic, which I thank God for the schools that did this. I don't know many that didn't, but even at least some of the school district here, they had spots where you can go pick up a lunch.
Yes.
And I read a statistic some time ago. They said that a lot of kids, even in public education, that may be their only meal for the day. That's scary. That's a problem. That's scary. What are your thoughts?
So listen, for you to say that's scary, I would agree. That's scary that we have students in our community that they are worried about what they're going to eat the next day. Not only is it scary, but it's heartbreaking because it just lets you know how we have to do more to assist those families. But like you said, Lee Summit, they got it right on that. They got it right. They was able to provide meals for students so that through this pandemic, that was one less thing that they would have to worry about is what they're going to eat. And so I give kudos to the board and to the administration on making that happen. But there's more work to do. And so again, you have to praise them when they're doing great, but then also you have to hold them accountable when there needs to be some changes and adjustments.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think all the blame or everything falls on one specific group of people. I think all of the for lack of that, I think all of the communal aspect comes from the community. It comes from the teachers doing their part, but it comes from the parents, it comes from the principal. And I think Principal Barnett's a great principal. We at PLE. Mm-hmm. And all the people that rally around our kids are very important. And as for us, even with COVID, how has that affected some people by your standards?
So I think economically, I think COVID has affected families. I think mentally, I think physically, I think emotionally. And then again, I think even educationally, when you're having students that were 4.0 students, have been able and been fortunate to engage with a lot of parents, with a lot of teachers. And, when I hear a mother says that, her kid is flunking a particular class when, so that's making that kid stressed out because they never had an F before. Sure. So I think that there's in many ways the family has been affected. And
Yeah.
so you're right when you say that you can't pinpoint it just to one particular
Right.
thing on why
Yeah.
things are happening.
Yeah.
You know, nobody, I don't think in a million years would have ever thought that we would be living in the type of days that we're in right now,
Yeah.
where you have to, someone sneeze, you ready to run the other direction. One of the things that I like to say on all of my literature, is there. It says together we can. And so I think that's the important piece, is that we have to work together. We have to be able to collaborate. We have to be more understanding. We have to be more empathetic and sensitive to our community and the needs of our community. And so I think that's what we have to do. We have to just learn to work together and understand that, we may not agree on everything, but we have to be able to work together. We have to listen to each other so that we can make sure the best decisions for our community and especially our school district is what happens. We have a great school district. We have a great school district.
Absolutely. I wouldn't disagree with that. I totally agree with that. And I noticed that, even I just lost my train of thought there. But it does. It's a beautiful thing when it comes together, and I think it's coming together. I think that a lot of the people that are in the community, at least some is growing. At least some it's growing by leaps and bounds, man.
Yes.
And we have to be ready for that. And our school infrastructure has to be ready for that. And our schools are growing, and when it comes to that, here's my point. When it comes to that, that's important. So I had a conversation with someone the other day. I was like, COVID's like everybody's been put on punishment. We've had to isolate ourselves. We've had to not be able to touch our friends. We have not been able to go visit most people that we care about and we love. It's almost like we've been on punishment, but we've been on punishment for doing nothing wrong. And it's like when you get a whooping or something as a kid or whatever case, so you get put in punishment. It's like, well, what did I do? But you didn't do anything wrong. See, but I think the effects of that will not only be for 2021, but I think it'll be for 2022, 2023, 2024, and we'll see those effects, later years down the road. That stuff will start to unravel, and we have to have people in position to be ready for that, because the thing that that whether somebody had COVID and they got over COVID, or whether someone had just the isolation aspect of it, we need to be ready for that. And schools were having kids that have been in school, out of school, in school, out of school, in school, out of school. They need to be ready for those kids to come back and just really adjust to coming back to school on a normal basis.
Yes. You know what? You're absolutely right. When you say, the back and forth, the kids are in school one day, they're out of school the next day. And so you're right. We have to be more proactive and not reactive. And so I think it's important that, as decision makers, as planners, that we are really seeing what is going on. What is the pulse of our community? What is the pulse of our students? And so we need to make decisions based on our students. What is going to be the best decision so that our students do not fail? And I'm not talking about an A, B, C, or D. I'm talking about failing in life. I'm talking about failing through going to school. I'm talking about being able to set them up for success. And so every decision that we make, it should be about our community. It should be about our families. If there's no family, there's no Lee Summit. And so that's why families are important, and it's important that we continue to have our hand on the pulse of this community.
Absolutely. Years ago when I was in the elementary school, and I remember one specific incident where I went to the grocery store and I saw my teacher, and I was like, "Hey, there's my teacher, Mrs. Lee," and just for me to see my teacher outside of the school is a big thing, and I noticed when my kids went out to the store the other day and beyond COVID but whatnot, we saw one of my daughter's teachers, and I thought she saw the president. She was like, "No, wasn't." I said, "Well, you just saw her the other day." But that is important. That is the power of a relationship.
You're so right.
That is the power of a relationship. That is the power of people seeing people, loving on people, and respecting people. That is what we have. And I mean, and we live in an age right now where some of that's lost.
Mhm.
And some of that's lost. Some of the communal aspect of it is lost. But I think deep down inside, we're still human beings, but we're still people, and
Right.
we still have that in us to want to relate to people. And I think we have to just find that. And
Mhm.
it's not far away.
I would agree. You know what? I think it's very important. Like you said, when I was growing up, and even for you, it just meant something when you saw your teacher.
Yeah.
I guess only if you was a good kid. If you was a good kid and you was turning your homework in, you was on the teacher's, the teacher's
Yeah.
favorite list, or
Yeah.
you went to be the line leader that week.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Then you was happy to see your teacher. No, but all
Yeah.
seriously, you know what? It was always exciting to see the teacher,
Yeah.
because the teacher, a lot of times you spend more time building a relationship with your teacher than you do
Yeah.
even at home.
Yeah.
Because if mom is out working, dad's out working, or when they come home, it's about trying to get the kids fed, or
Yeah.
they, parents have their own professions and things of that nature. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times, sometimes that real intimate relationship is built with the
Yeah.
teacher, is built with the administration staff. And so you're
100%.
right. It's important that those relationships are being built. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, our staff, I believe, have done a wonderful job
Yeah.
of still, even though they're not able to touch the student or be right next to the student, I think they've been doing a tremendous job of really trying to build relationships with our students in
Yeah.
our district. And
Yeah.
that's why, for me, even campaigning, it's about building relationships. It's not
Yeah.
about getting everyone to see all of my point of views and agree with me, but it's about being able to understand that, listen, I'm just like you. I'm a
Yeah.
working dad. I love my kids. I want the best for my kids. I moved to Lee Summit because of the great school district. I work hard every day to be able to provide for my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
So when you start seeing, we actually have more in common than we
Right.
do, than we have differences. And so when you
Absolutely.
think of our teachers are
Yeah.
exactly the same. They have
Yeah.
families, they have
Yeah.
kids. And so they're going through the same things that we go through. And so I think just being able to foster good, solid relationships with one another, it makes such a big difference.
I totally agree, and I thank you for saying that because that means a whole lot. One time in particular, I missed my daughter's assignment. I was going from the kindergarten to my fourth grader, and I'm kind of going back and forth. And I was like, "Oh, we missed one assignment." I'm beating myself up like, "Oh man, this is," And I emailed her teacher. She was like, "You know what? Shit, don't worry about it. It's okay." And I'm like, "Oh, but she's like, it's all right. Just tomorrow we'll get better at it." And that meant a lot to me because I'm
Yes.
I'm not a I'm not a teacher. I haven't I don't have a degree as a teacher. I work my job and I take care of my family. I have no clue what teachers go through. But
Mhm.
but for her to simply say, you know what, it's okay. And I was like,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
you
I've been fortunate.
I didn't get beat up. I didn't get beat up, and I wasn't the bad parent, and I wasn't, oh man, oh my goodness. I was like, you know what, it's okay.
Yeah. I've been fortunate. My wife, a lot of her aunts and her grandmother were all educators. Collectively together, we're probably looking over probably about 80 years of, of,
Wow.
of teaching in the educational system. And so being able to even have conversations with them, when we're hard on our kids and and they're reminding us of, they're a teacher, they're the professional. And so, you have to listen. You have to listen to those that know. And this is what they do for their life. And
Yeah,
so we have to appreciate them. We have to listen
absolutely.
to them. And we have to just remember that they're just like us. They're
Yeah,
just trying to do the best in the profession that they chose for their life.
absolutely. What are your thoughts when people say that the public school education is failing us? What are your thoughts on that?
I
I,
disagree.
okay.
I think the public education system is a great system to be able to put your students in.
Mm-hmm.
I think now, are there changes that need to be made? Are there things that can be better? Absolutely. Let's be honest. What isn't in life? There's many of things that we could change to make things better. And so I think what's important is just doing the work to make it better. And so when someone says, I choose private school or I choose this or that, great for you. But for my students, I want to put them through the public school system. Again, I made the decision to move where I moved, and live in this community because of the school system, the public school system.
Beautiful, because it is, man. And I've heard people say that before, and I've heard people say that this education outweighs the other education. Education is education. And now are you exposed to different things and different aspects of education? Yeah. But education, and education, really, it's in school, but it starts at home. When at home, that's when you begin to instill in your children. We can't leave it all to the teachers. Teachers, not the parents and the teachers. The teachers oftentimes have their own families. And I think a lot of times, we when we are overworked, we talked about how the mom or single mom or the single dad, for that matter, come home and they have to get dinner done, but they've worked an 8-hour shift. They've just beat rush hour traffic. They picked you up from the babysitter. They came home, and they just want to sit back and do nothing.
Yes.
But oftentimes it's easy for us as parents or some parents to be like, you know what, figure it out at school. But that's not all. That's really not the answer. The answer is, even with our with our children, even if we spent some time during the evening just kind of going through some things that they've already rehashed at school, and sometimes we don't do it, and oftentimes even with the tablets now, and the Chromebooks, we're having to say, turn that off. Do your eyeballs hurt? Your eyeballs got to hurt. Turn that off. You on the Chromebook. And I think that's been the aspect of the whole virtual reality thing. I think it's gotten it's good and bad. It's gotten our kids used to watching on the tablet, but it's also definitely a blessing, because it's definitely being able to help us connect with the teachers and see the other students and things like that. So it's definitely a blessing and a curse at that.
Yes, I would agree. I tell my kids, so I can most definitely tell you that I relate, because I have to tell my kids, get off your tablet, get off your phone. You done looked at the screen all day today. But you're right. This is another avenue. And so, like you said, when we talked a little earlier, and we talked about, the what has COVID-19 taught us. Well, what it taught us is that virtual education, it can be useful.
Yeah.
And so let's just even hear this. If we're suspending kids, do we suspend them and send them home to where they get to just play the video games all day? Or do we suspend them because of maybe a behavioral issue and they're still able to learn? And so that's just, again, that's just right off the cuff. I'm not saying that that's a policy that I would completely support, but I'm just saying, so the things that we have to be able to say, what did this teach us? And then what can we learn from this? And then how can we utilize the resources that we have to make sure that our kids succeed? And so that's why it's important to have a community voice. That's why it's important to have, mom and dad on to listen to them. That's why it's important to listen to our kids, to be able to see what our kids are doing. And just because everyone, don't have the same walk of life, don't mean that their point of view is not valid.
Right.
It's okay if you have a doctorate degree in education, but that doesn't mean that the gentleman that's working at Ford Motor Company, his voice doesn't matter. Or that his children don't deserve the same education, or it doesn't matter if the single father or the single mother, don't have the flexibility or the time to show up to every PTA event or to show up to, every, donuts with dad or pancakes with mom, just because I may not have that flexibility does not mean that my voice should not be heard.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true, man. Oftentimes is we don't know, and let me reset the show. We're talking with Mr. Roderick Sparks, who actually in Lee Summit running for Lee Summit school board, Mr. Roderick Sparks. KUAW Radio with Street Therapy. This is Chris. So, uh, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a scenario. Everybody has something, and I think oftentimes is when we go beyond the surface, when we get deep and we actually understand the person, everything comes off. Everything comes off. The color factor is no longer a barrier. Right. My socioeconomic background is no longer a barrier. Right. The way I was raised is no longer a barrier. We relate to where I am now and where we're moving forward. Do I hurt? Yes, I hurt. Do you hurt? Yes, you hurt. Do you have feelings? Do you want to see your children succeed? Yes. Yes. That is common. And that's what and you said just a moment ago. We have more in common than we have, our differences.
Correct.
But oftentimes is when we get to the point where we let our differences define us, that's where we get into trouble.
I would totally agree.
That's where the trouble begins. So, man, that is a beautiful point. So, anybody when is the vote? I should have wrote that down there. The vote is coming up.
The election is on April the 6th.
Yeah.
April the 6th. But again, also remember that you have to register in order to vote. So make sure that you register to vote by March the 10th. March the 10th is the deadline to register to vote.
How important? Okay, so we just voted a new president, Joe Biden. How important is local elections in your observation?
Local elections are very important because it's what immediately affects the family.
Absolutely.
Is the local election where you live, where you work, where you serve. Yep. And so I think that's why it's very important that you do become engaged. I personally was always someone that had been engaged, especially as an adult of local elections. But I've been able to reach out to my siblings and show them. And again, so, you mentioned this, you said that we all have a story. And so when you think about everyone's individual story, the reason why I may not have been so engaged with local elections and things of that nature is because that may not have been taught to me. I may not really truly know the direct impact that local elections have on my daily life. And so, my grandfather would say this, God bless his soul, but he would say, when you know better, you do what? You do better. And so, right. I think it's important that we try to share with other families in our community why it's so important. So I tell people all the time, I don't want this school board election I don't want you to think that it's just important because I'm running. Yeah. It's important because it sends a signal of the pulse of this community.
Yes, sir.
And so it's important that everyone's voice is heard. It's important that everyone vote. It's important that everyone stays engaged, that they know the candidates, that they know what they stand for, that they know what they're going to do, so that there'll be no shocks. And so if you don't learn, if you don't know, then it's hard to kind of complain where we are if you didn't play a part of getting us to where we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mr. Sparks, we got a few more minutes in the show here, but I want to bring up this. And I think this is very important. We talked about the education from our students needing to be educated, but to be honest with you, our parents need to be educated as well. And what I mean by that, no knock against the parents, but what I mean by that is oftentimes is when you don't know really what's going on when you haven't been involved, or you haven't been engaged, or you just really haven't been educated, or you really just don't know.
Right.
When you run into things like that, it's easy to get frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so simple to be like, you know what, let somebody else take care of it,
Right.
and you know what, I don't want to be involved, I don't understand it, forget it. How important
Right.
is the education of our parents to know
You
what's
know, it
going
is it's very important. You know, my background, I also served as a union president for United Steelworkers.
on?
And one of the things that I realize is, you know, you have a group of individuals, you know, 300 individuals that come from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
They have different backgrounds, they have different understandings, they have different educational levels. And one of the things that I felt it was very important is that I listened.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's important to listen is because then you know where they are.
Yeah.
And then once you know where they are, you
Yeah.
meet them right where they are and you try to work with them. You teach them, you educate them. And then before you know it, you have a force to be reckoned with. And so
Absolutely.
when you are able to say that it's important to make sure that all parents understand, it's important. And so when you see that there's lack of understanding or lack of knowledge, a lot of this does not have to do with will, because I think all of our parents want the best for their children.
Absolutely.
I think all of our parents want, you know, Lee Summit to be number one, which in my book, I believe that we are number one in the educational system. But, you know, so because we know that the willingness is there, what's important is to make sure that we are giving the resources and the knowledge so that everyone can play their part. And so our teachers play their part, our students play their part, our parents play their part, and then abroad, community-wide, we play a part to where together we can. That's why it's so important that we work together. We got to work together.
Yeah. That's very important. You know, there was a phrase that say, people don't care how much you know until they know that you care. And I might have butchered that up. But I really don't care about how much you know unless I know that you care about me.
Yes.
You have to care about me. You may not understand my struggle, you may not understand but at least I know you care about me as a person. At least I know you care about my children and their education. At least I know that you care about your community. You know, you have to care. And I believe that's what you do, man. I really appreciate what you do. And I watched it walking through snow the other day, man. I said, man, that brother got snow on his shoes, man.
Listen, hey, I'm telling you, you know, my parents, you know, I'm gonna give a shout out to my mom and dad, if that's all right. Mom and dad, hey, but you know what? My parents, they were a perfect example of working hard.
Good.
And so, you know, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. I'm ready to do the work. And I'm not here to say that I know everything, because I don't. But what I am ready to say is that I'm willing to learn. Absolutely. I'm willing to learn everything so that I can be the best school board member for the Lee Summit School District.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, for people who, as we wrap this up, for people that may live in the Lee Summit area, or people just really want to know about who you are, how can they reach out to you, Raf?
So listen, you can do a couple of things. You can go to my Facebook page, that is Sparks for LSR7. That's SPARKS for LSR7. Or you can email me directly. You can email me at friendsforrajsparks at gmail.com. That's friendsforrajsparks at gmail.com. Or you can even call me. If you want to call me directly, you have some questions, please call me at 816-348-3833. That's 816-348-3833. And I'll pick up the phone. If I don't answer, just leave a message and I promise you I'll call you back.
Beautiful, beautiful. Closing words. Just before we close out on this note here, leave us with something, Roger. Leave us, Mr. Sparks. Leave us with something that just close us out. Close us out. Go ahead and close us out.
You know, listen. We've had a rough year. We have had a really rough year with this global pandemic. Many of our families have been affected. you have been affected through what we have gone on. I believe decisions from the board and even decisions that we've kind of have even experienced here in the Lee Summit community. We've had superintendents to come and to go. We've had issues with families feeling like our students should be in person versus virtual. And so some of our community members, they're divided. And so I believe that we have to work together. I believe that it's important that your voices are heard on April the 6th for this school board election. And I think it's important that we all work together. If we work together, I believe we can move mountains. And so my word for you is to listen, stay engaged, do what you can, do what you can. And what you can't, that's when others will chip in and help so that all of our kids are successful. And then lastly, I'm proud of our kids. Our kids, even through the trials and the things that they have endured, it puts a smile on my face seeing, I was out canvassing even last night and seeing kids, riding their bike in the community, seeing kids playing with ball. This was our first, good day yesterday with the sun shining and the temperatures was great. And so being able to see that our kids are still kids, and being able to see that, even though they've gone through what they've gone through, but there's still hope. And so to be able to see that, I'm just excited for what the future holds.
Beautiful, beautiful. Man, listen, I really appreciate your time. I thank you for you being a stand-up gentleman. And definitely everybody that's listening to this program, if you're living in Lee Summit, go ahead and get out there. Register. If you're not registered, and then go vote because it really does make a difference. It really does. Oftentimes we hear people say that, my vote don't count. Your vote counts. Your vote means a lot. And there's been people that have died, even our ancestors have died for your right to vote. Please do that. That is your right. And it should be, and you should want to do that because that's where you live. Well, Mr. Sparks, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And you've been listening to Street Therapy on KUAW Radio. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for holding it down on the ones and twos over there, sir. Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Sparks, take care, man. Until then, we'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate that, and I hope I have your vote, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. All right, Mr. Walker, we take care.
All right, you're listening to KUAW Radio.